The Earth had grown quiet when it came to space. Centuries of dreams, wars, triumphs, and failures had left humanity wiser, but also cautious. They still sent out ships, still gazed into the endless dark, but the wild, reckless optimism of their earliest explorations had faded into a slower, steadier rhythm. It was during one of those long, slow nights that the signal arrived. It began as nothing more than a whisper across the deep space network, a pulse so faint most systems filtered it out as background noise. But one old technician, a man who still loved the stars the way children love fairy tales, noticed something different. The pattern was deliberate, almost familiar. He brought it to his supervisor, who brought it to her director. And within hours, the signal had become the most important thing on Earth. The first breakthrough came when an aging artificial intelligence, trained decades earlier on ancient telemetry, matched the signal structure to a lost archive. The name that came up was almost a myth. Odyssey 1, the first deep space probe humanity had launched into interstellar space over 300 years ago. No one had expected it to survive the journey. Its transmission systems should have failed after a few decades. Its propulsion should have drifted into nothingness. And yet, here it was, calling home. Panic and hope surged together. Teams of scientists, engineers, linguists, and historians gathered to decode the signal. Data poured through the servers in bursts, as if Odyssey itself was struggling to remember how to speak after centuries alone. Every few minutes brought new surprises. Positioning data placed the probe not drifting in the void, but on a steady trajectory, inbound. It was coming home. Earth's Space Command scrambled fleets into position. Observation satellites focused their eyes toward the stars. They caught the first glimpse of the returning probe silhouetted against the dark, a small, gleaming shape that pulsed with strange light. It looked nothing like the battered craft they had launched so long ago. Its outer shell shimmered with colors the human eye struggled to name. Energy readings flared and dipped in patterns that defied every known law of physics. It was Odyssey, and yet it wasn't. Public broadcasts began almost immediately. News feeds filled with theories, speculation, and fear. Had Odyssey encountered something out there? Had it been changed? Or worse, replaced? Was it still theirs? Or was it now something else entirely? In a matter of days, the world united around a single question. What had Odyssey 1 seen? As the probe entered Earth's upper orbit, moving with a precision no human technology could explain, a small recovery vessel launched to intercept. Inside, a team of astronauts trained in first contact procedures steadied themselves for the unknown. Their mission was simple in words but monumental in weight: retrieve the probe, bring it home, and find out what had happened. Odyssey 1 drifted closer, its surface gleaming like the surface of a living star. It offered no resistance, no threats, no warning. It simply waited. The world watched, breathless, as humanity prepared to meet its own forgotten child, and the mysteries it had carried across the stars. The recovery operation began in earnest, the world holding its breath as Odyssey 1 drifted silently above them. A small fleet of spacecraft was dispatched to rendezvous with the probe. Despite all the advancements humanity had made in space travel, the situation still felt eerily reminiscent of their earliest missions: a small vessel, a fragile tether between Earth and the vast unknown. Odyssey 1, now caught in Earth's gravity well, seemed almost alive. It pulsed with strange energy, sending intermittent bursts of data that defied the comprehension of even the most advanced systems. The closer the recovery vessel came, the more peculiar the probe appeared. Its surface, once a familiar matte finish, now shimmered with iridescent hues, glowing faintly like the surface of a distant star. There were no obvious signs of wear, no scars from its prolonged journey through the void. It was as if time had no hold over it at all. The astronauts aboard the recovery ship exchanged uneasy glances. They had trained for this moment, but nothing had prepared them for the sight of the probe in person. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was something other. The engineers who'd once designed it, the ones who sent it out into the stars, would never have recognized the craft that had returned. It had been altered by something or someone. The modifications were both subtle and profound, an intricate web of technology far beyond human understanding. The recovery team slowly approached, using the magnetic tethers to latch onto the probe's hull. Despite their careful maneuvers, the probe made no response. It simply hung there, as if waiting. It was almost as if Odyssey 1 had been anticipating this moment for centuries, its systems perfectly calibrated to endure the long return. "Prepare for physical inspection," Captain Laura Hong commanded, her voice steady despite the heavy silence that filled the cabin. "This is unprecedented. Proceed with caution." As the astronauts suited up for the first EVA, extravehicular activity, the atmosphere inside the recovery ship was tense. They were about to lay their hands on an object that had ventured farther than any human had before, and which now carried secrets no one on Earth could have imagined. The outside world, meanwhile, buzzed with speculation. What had Odyssey 1 discovered? What had it encountered out there? The question loomed larger with each passing second. Captain Hong and her team made their way to the probe's outer panel, where they noticed something odd. Strange symbols etched into the metal, as if the probe had been marked by a foreign hand. Some were patterns they couldn't even begin to understand. They glowed faintly, as if responding to their presence. Her gloved hand brushed against one of the symbols, and a low hum reverberated through her suit. She froze. "What was that?" one of the crew members asked, his voice strained with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "It's alive," Hong whispered, almost to herself. "The probe. It's reacting." Just then, a faint pulse of light shot out from the probe's surface, cutting through the darkness of space like a beacon. It wasn't a distress signal, nor was it an invitation. It felt more like a greeting, a signal that the probe, whatever it had become, was aware. And that awareness was directed at them. Suddenly, the air inside the recovery ship felt thicker, charged with an energy they couldn't explain. The probe wasn't just a machine anymore. It had become something far more enigmatic. The team knew that what they were about to uncover would change everything. Once inside the recovery ship, the probe was carefully secured in a specially designed containment bay. The team had been given the monumental task of unlocking the vast amounts of data stored within Odyssey 1, and though they had seen glimpses of its strange energy, they still couldn't comprehend what lay hidden within. The initial scans showed vast sections of data, encrypted beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. For days, the recovery team worked in shifts, connecting Odyssey's systems to the ship's mainframe, slowly extracting its data with painstaking care. The probe seemed to be operating on its own terms, its systems opening in unpredictable bursts. As the data began to pour in, it was clear. Odyssey 1 had been on an extraordinary journey. The first image that appeared on the screen was of a world unlike anything Earth had ever seen. It was a massive ocean planet, where the water glowed with bioluminescent life, stretching beyond the horizon. There were no visible landmasses, only endless waves crashing against each other. Floating cities dotted the surface, suspended by technology unknown to humanity. The city lights were vibrant against the black ocean, illuminating the vastness of the world. This is incredible," muttered Dr. Maya Alvarez, the lead scientist on the project. "This isn't just a planet, it's a civilization." The probe's data feeds continued, each one more astonishing than the last. There were images of strange, crystalline life forms that moved like liquid through massive caverns beneath the surface of distant moons. Another recorded a sprawling city built into the sides of a gas giant, suspended in the atmosphere, where people and creatures alike lived in harmony with their environment. These beings, if they could even be called that, had bodies made entirely of shimmering light. The data suggested they were more energy than matter, existing as living rays of brilliance. And then, there were the recordings of encounters. Some civilizations were curious, studying Odyssey 1 from afar, their transmissions eager to learn from it. Others were wary, fearful of its arrival, seeing the probe as an invasion or a threat. Odyssey had been an observer, a silent traveler, gathering knowledge without interfering. The most haunting footage, however, came from a race of beings who had called themselves the Aetheri. Their planet, once lush and full of life, was now a graveyard of shattered cities and decaying monuments. The Aetheri had contacted Odyssey, hoping to learn from it. But what they found was not a solution, but a mirror. The Aetheri were a proud race, powerful and advanced, but they had failed in their most fundamental task, to preserve their way of life. Their civilization had crumbled under the weight of their own ambition, consumed by internal strife and environmental collapse. Odyssey recorded their plea, a final message to Earth. You must learn from us. We were once like you, but we failed. Do not let your future be written in the same dust. The team paused in stunned silence as the message finished. The room was heavy with the weight of the Aetheri's warning. It was clear now that Odyssey had not only observed, but had been chosen to carry these memories across the stars, not just to catalog the wonders of the galaxy, but to bear witness to the rise and fall of civilizations. We have to understand this, Dr. Alvarez whispered. We have to learn everything we can. As the probe continued to reveal more data, more worlds, more encounters, and more secrets, humanity began to realize something monumental. They were no longer just explorers. They were now part of a much larger story, one that stretched across the stars, woven into the fabric of the galaxy itself. As the data continued to pour in, the recovery team became increasingly consumed by the complexity of Odyssey 1's journey. It wasn't just about gathering information anymore. It was about understanding how these civilizations, some so far advanced, had managed to survive, or failed to do so. But among the vast data troves, one name began to surface with startling frequency: the Aetheri. Their presence was not just a passing encounter, but a recurring theme. There were multiple instances where Odyssey had interacted with them, even as their civilization crumbled. The Aetheri were not simply another alien species. They were enigmatic, ancient, and deeply aware of their own eventual downfall. What had started as a simple contact evolved into something far more profound. The Aetheri had seemingly chosen to monitor humanity. The team unearthed a startling series of transmissions, encrypted but unmistakable in their intent. The Aetheri had known about humanity for centuries. In one such message, a voice reverberated through the deep space frequencies, its tone distant but clear. It was a single poignant sentence. We have watched, waiting for you to see. Do not let your failure be our legacy. Dr. Alvarez stared at the message in silence. It wasn't just an observation. It was a plea. The Aetheri had known they were on the brink of destruction, and they had sought to pass on their knowledge to any species with the potential to learn from their mistakes. Humanity, it seemed, was their last hope. The team now focused their attention on the Aetheri's final transmission, which had been recorded just before their collapse. It described their once thriving empire, how they had mastered the art of energy manipulation and travel between stars. Yet, like so many others, they had become consumed by their own technological prowess. The Aetheri had advanced beyond biological forms, merging their essence with energy itself. But their arrogance had led them to ignore the fragility of their ecosystems, the consequences of unchecked growth, and the eventual decay of their own world. As the team sifted through the data, they found more than just warnings. They found something extraordinary, a map, not of stars, but of vital locations scattered across the galaxy. These were places of ancient power, places where knowledge, technology, and resources could be found. The Aetheri had hidden this map within Odyssey's systems, knowing it would eventually reach a species that could make use of it. Humanity's potential to unlock these places was unparalleled, and the Aetheri had placed their faith in this small, fledgling species. What does this mean? Asked Captain Hong, looking over the screen that displayed the star map. The locations glowed with a strange energy, as though waiting for something. Are they giving us these coordinates? Yes, Dr. Alvarez replied, her voice low with awe. This is a gift. They believe in us. The realization hit hard. The Aetheri hadn't just watched. They had prepared humanity to take their place, not as conquerors, but as caretakers of the galaxy, as explorers who would avoid the same fatal mistakes. Captain Hong turned to the rest of the team. We need to be careful. If these places hold the kind of knowledge and power we think they do, we could change everything. But we must be worthy of it. As the team set about decoding the full scope of the map, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had just become part of something far larger than they could comprehend. The Aetheri had shown them the way, but it was up to humanity to decide how to proceed. The journey had only just begun. The weight of the Aetheri's message hung over Earth, a silent reminder of the responsibility humanity had inherited. What had started as the return of a long-lost probe had now spiraled into something far more profound. The knowledge and technology contained within Odyssey 1 were unprecedented, and yet the more the team learned, the more they understood that this was not a gift of power, it was a test. The Aetheri, once a proud and powerful civilization, had placed their faith in humanity not because of their technological capabilities, but because of their spirit. Their message, hidden within the data, was a testament to something humanity had long underestimated in the cold expanse of space: their ability to adapt, to dream, and to persist when everything else seemed to crumble. Dr. Alvarez stood in front of the vast screens in the recovery bay, her fingers tracing the glowing map of the galaxy. It was almost overwhelming. Each point of light represented not just a location, but an opportunity. Some were buried beneath dead worlds, others beneath the surface of suns, and a few in places humanity had only dreamt of. Yet each of these coordinates seemed to pulse with potential, if only they could reach them. The Aetheri were not like us, Alvarez muttered, speaking to herself more than anyone else. They had the power to change everything, and yet they couldn't see the danger until it was too late. They couldn't adapt in time. Maybe that's why they believed in us, Captain Hong replied, her voice low but resolute. We don't have the same arrogance. We still dream, still believe that we can overcome, that we can create something better. The rest of the team gathered around, their faces reflecting a quiet awe. They had all seen the Aetheri's final transmission, the ghostly images of their crumbling cities, the desperate plea for humanity to avoid the same fate. And while it could have been seen as a burden, as a challenge too great to bear, something about it felt different. It was as if the Aetheri weren't just passing on knowledge. They were passing on hope. The team had expected fear, hesitation, even resistance. But what they found instead was a collective resolve. They weren't just deciphering alien messages and unearthing technologies. They were being called to something far greater. The Aetheri had watched humanity from the shadows of the galaxy, noting the way humans persevered. How, against all odds, they rose after every fall, never losing the spark of curiosity and imagination that had driven them to the stars in the first place. For the first time in history, humanity had become a beacon of potential in the vast darkness of space. Where once they had been a young species struggling to understand their place, they now stood at the precipice of a future that was theirs to shape. The Aetheri, despite their own tragic fate, saw in humans a rare spark of possibility, and they had placed their hope in them. Captain Hong addressed the team, her eyes focused on the map. We have to be worthy of this. We have to be the generation that doesn't fall victim to the same mistakes. We have to build something with this knowledge, something that will last. There was a brief silence before Dr. Alvarez nodded in agreement. Let's honor their belief in us. We will learn, adapt, and explore, and we will do it wisely. As the team began their preparations, a quiet sense of unity settled over them. The Aetheri had given them more than just a gift. They had given them a purpose, and for the first time in human history, it was clear. Humanity was not just a species looking to conquer the stars. They were a species looking to understand them. The silence of space seemed to deepen as humanity took its first steps toward fulfilling the Aetheri's legacy. With the map securely integrated into Earth's most advanced systems, the decision had been made. The team would set off to uncover the first of the Aethery's hidden sites. A fleet of ships had been assembled, each one designed to reach the farthest corners of the galaxy where the ancient power and knowledge lay buried. The destination was clear, a distant star system marked on the map, one that the Aethery had indicated as a place of significance. What they didn't know was that the journey would not be without challenges. The Aethery had been more than just observers. They had been protectors of this knowledge, guarding it against those who might misuse it. As humanity would soon discover, the path to these ancient sites would be lined with obstacles, both natural and artificial. Dr. Alvarez stood at the front of the mission control room, watching as the fleet's ships prepared for launch. They had spent weeks studying the first set of coordinates, and the data suggested that the location was on a barren moon orbiting a dying star. However, there was more to the story than just a dormant planet waiting to be explored. The energy readings were fluctuating in strange patterns, something that shouldn't have been possible given the moon's current condition. "What do you make of the energy spikes, Dr. Alvarez?" asked Captain Hong, who stood beside her, her face set with determination. Alvarez frowned as she examined the data. "It's as if there's something underneath the surface, a hidden power source, something active, yet dormant. It doesn't make sense." Captain Hong's eyes narrowed. "Could it be Aethery technology?" "It has to be," Alvarez replied, her voice tinged with awe. "They must have set up a defense mechanism, something to keep intruders at bay. They didn't just leave these sites lying around for anyone to stumble upon." The team now understood the full extent of their task. The Aethery had left behind not just maps and knowledge, but tests. They were gatekeepers, watching from the shadows, ensuring that whoever came next was worthy of the treasures they protected. If humanity was to survive, they would need to pass these trials, not with brute force or technology, but with wisdom and restraint. The fleet launched in unison, streaking across the black void toward the distant star system. As the ships entered the system, the team felt the weight of the Aethery's warning in every movement. The path ahead would not be easy. It was one thing to gather knowledge, but another to use it wisely. As they approached the barren moon, the energy readings began to intensify. A shimmering barrier appeared in orbit, a protective shield that seemed to pulse with life. It was unlike any defense humanity had encountered before, an energy field of such complexity that it seemed to bend the laws of physics itself. The ships slowed as they reached the edge of the barrier, and an eerie silence filled the command deck. "Are we supposed to break through this?" one of the astronauts asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "No," Captain Hong replied firmly. "We will find a way around it. The Aethery wouldn't have left us unprepared. They're watching, but they want us to pass, not destroy." The team had come to understand something vital. The Aethery's tests weren't designed to challenge their strength, but their understanding. The barrier wasn't an obstacle to overcome through force. It was a lesson in patience, in humility. If they could learn to approach the unknown with respect, they would be worthy of what lay beneath the surface. The team moved carefully, analyzing every possibility, every option. The first trial had begun. The silence of space seemed to deepen as humanity took its first steps toward fulfilling the Aethery's legacy. With the map securely integrated into Earth's most advanced systems, the decision had been made. The team would set off to uncover the first of the Aethery's hidden sites. A fleet of ships had been assembled, each one designed to reach the farthest corners of the galaxy where the ancient power and knowledge lay buried. The destination was clear, a distant star system marked on the map, one that the Aethery had indicated as a place of significance. What they didn't know was that the journey would not be without challenges. The Aethery had been more than just observers. They had been protectors of this knowledge, guarding it against those who might misuse it. As humanity would soon discover, the path to these ancient sites would be lined with obstacles, both natural and artificial. Dr. Alvarez stood at the front of the mission control room, watching as the fleet's ships prepared for launch. They had spent weeks studying the first set of coordinates, and the data suggested that the location was on a barren moon orbiting a dying star. However, there was more to the story than just a dormant planet waiting to be explored. The energy readings were fluctuating in strange patterns, something that shouldn't have been possible given the moon's current condition. "What do you make of the energy spikes, Dr. Alvarez?" asked Captain Hong, who stood beside her, her face set with determination. Alvarez frowned as she examined the data. "It's as if there's something underneath the surface. A hidden power source, something active, yet dormant. It doesn't make sense." Captain Hong's eyes narrowed. "Could it be etheri technology?" "It has to be," Alvarez replied, her voice tinged with awe. "They must have set up a defense mechanism, something to keep intruders at bay. They didn't just leave these sites lying around for anyone to stumble upon." The team now understood the full extent of their task. The etheri had left behind not just maps and knowledge, but tests. They were gatekeepers, watching from the shadows, ensuring that whoever came next was worthy of the treasures they protected. If humanity was to survive, they would need to pass these trials, not with brute force or technology, but with wisdom and restraint. The fleet launched in unison, streaking across the black void toward the distant star system. As the ships entered the system, the team felt the weight of the Aetheri's warning in every movement. The path ahead would not be easy. It was one thing to gather knowledge, but another to use it wisely. As they approached the barren moon, the energy readings began to intensify. A shimmering barrier appeared in orbit, a protective shield that seemed to pulse with life. It was unlike any defense humanity had encountered before, an energy field of such complexity that it seemed to bend the laws of physics itself. The ships slowed as they reached the edge of the barrier, and an eerie silence filled the command deck. "Are we supposed to break through this?" one of the astronauts asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "No," Captain Hong replied firmly. "We will find a way around it. The etheri wouldn't have left us unprepared. They're watching, but they want us to pass, not destroy." The team had come to understand something vital. The etheri's tests weren't designed to challenge their strength, but their understanding. The barrier wasn't an obstacle to overcome through force. It was a lesson in patience, in humility. If they could learn to approach the unknown with respect, they would be worthy of what lay beneath the surface. The team moved carefully, analyzing every possibility, every option. The first trial had begun. As the fleet passed through the now gentle barrier, they descended toward the surface of the barren moon. The landscape below was stark, a desolate expanse of cracked earth and lifeless rock. It felt like an ancient world, forgotten by time. Yet there was an undeniable pull to it, a sense of hidden purpose beneath the surface. The moon, though seemingly lifeless, was far from empty. "Are you sure this is the right location?" Captain Hong asked, her voice steady, but tinged with curiosity as she looked out at the desolate terrain. "It's the exact spot," Dr. Alvarez confirmed, scanning the data. "Everything matches. The energy readings are increasing as we approach the center of the moon's surface. It's almost as though something is awakening." The team landed their ships carefully, their feet touching the surface of the moon for the first time. It was quiet, save for the faint hum of their spacecraft's systems. The air was thin, almost non-existent, but they were prepared. The real challenge now was what lay beneath their feet, the first of the Aetheri's hidden sites. A small group of scientists and engineers exited the ships, equipped with excavation tools and devices to probe the ground. They began their careful excavation near a large, mysterious structure that they had detected beneath the surface. The structure was unmistakable, its edges sharp and angular, far too precise to be natural. It was the remains of something ancient, yet far more advanced than any technology humanity had ever encountered. "We found something," one of the engineers, Lieutenant Garrison, called out. "There's a door here. It looks sealed, but it's made of some kind of metallic alloy. I've never seen anything like it." Captain Hong and Dr. Alvarez approached the excavation site. The door was massive, its surface shimmering with faint blue lines that pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. The energy signatures emanating from it were off the charts, indicating that whatever lay beyond was not only alive but somehow active. Dr. Alvarez knelt beside the door, her fingers tracing the glowing lines. "This is incredible. It's a form of encryption, but it's organic, not mechanical. It's almost like the technology is living. It's part of the moon itself." The team had expected puzzles, tests, and obstacles, but this was something different. The Aetheri had hidden this secret so well, weaving their technology into the very fabric of the moon. To access it, they would need to do more than just solve equations or break codes. They would need to understand the essence of the Aetheri's creation. "This is the next trial," Captain Hong said quietly. "It's not about brute force or intelligence. It's about understanding the nature of their technology and respecting it. This is not just a door. It's a key to something much larger." The team stood in awe as the door began to respond to their presence. Slowly, the shimmering blue lines expanded and merged, forming intricate patterns that seemed to invite them in. The air around them seemed to hum with anticipation, and then, in a gentle movement, the door began to open. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber, its walls covered in glowing symbols and holographic displays, a space that felt ancient yet somehow familiar. As the team entered the chamber, they were greeted by an overwhelming sense of awe. It was as if the Aetheri had been waiting for them all along. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Alvarez whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Indeed it was. The chamber held the first fragment of the Aetheri's greatest secrets, a repository of knowledge that had been sealed away for millennia. But now, humanity had finally unlocked the door to the stars. What lay beyond would change everything. The trials had been a path to this moment, a moment when humanity was no longer just a species seeking to survive, but a species poised to inherit the legacy of the Aetheri and perhaps protect the future of the galaxy itself.